I'm Jacob Courtwright, and this is The Locker Room.
What is going on, everybody? It is Christmas time here at the Locker Room Podcast. Thanks again for joining us. Thanks again for listening. We've got a lot of great things going on. Like I said, it is Christmas time around here at the Locker Room Podcast. So we are in the giving spirit, and there's a couple of special giveaways we are going to talk about in just a moment. But before we get started, follow The Locker Room on Twitter, TLR with Jacob, on Instagram, The Locker Room Podcast 615, on Facebook, The Locker Room Host Jacob, and on TikTok, The Locker Room 22. Be sure to go over to FNX Fitness. That is fnxfit.com, fnxfit.com, for all your fitness and supplement needs. They now have workout clothes, workout gloves. So if you need anything to go to the gym and look better and feel better and get bigger and be better, FNX Fitness is the place for you. And be sure to use your promo code TLRHOST. TLRHOST, all capitals. 15% off, my gift to you. Go shout out our friends at FNX Fitness, and let's get into the show. Okay, so as I stated, we have a special Christmas Day giveaway. Here's how it's going to work. Every podcast on Tuesday from now until December 22nd, I will be dropping a few code words throughout the program. Now, these code words will not be cued by any kind of music. I might drop them at the very beginning, at the end. I might sprinkle it throughout. But in order to enter, you have to write down these code words. At the end of the December 22nd podcast, before midnight, you have to be the first person to put those code words into a sentence and DM me that sentence. So super simple. From now until Tuesday, December 22nd, I will be giving you a bunch of code words strictly on this podcast. It won't be on any of my social media. It won't be on any of my excess stuff, not on any of the Saturday morning pick'ems, nothing. And it's going to be dropped randomly throughout the podcast. So you're not going to get a music cue. You're not going to know exactly where it is. You have to actually listen to the podcast. And if you get all of those code words into a sentence, and if you DM me, and if you are the first person to do so, we have a very special gift for you, my treat to you, an awesome Christmas present from the Locker Room. You will not want to miss out on this gift. So if you are not only a fan of gifts, if you are a competitive person and want to be the first person to get this done, and then make sure you're liked, subscribed, you're following the podcast on every social media platform so you know when these episodes get posted, because it's within, a few minutes of each other every single Tuesday. But every Tuesday from now until December 22nd, find your code words, DM me on the evening of December 22nd, be the first person, win a grand prize. Super simple, my Christmas present to one lucky winner out there. Now let's get into my big topic of the day. Floyd Mayweather and Logan Paul have made it official. February 20th, here we go. So if you were with us last week on the podcast, you know my whole thought on boxing versus UFC, statistically which is doing better. So I'm not going to really harp too much on the boxing aspect because I went hard on it last week. I told you why I really don't like these celebrity boxing matches. If you haven't watched that episode, I encourage you, go listen to that and then rejoin us so I don't have to really talk about a whole lot of it now because I filled in the last episode. So go back, listen to that episode, come back and rejoin us. But here's the deal. The biggest question that people want to know is, why is this happening? Why? Well, there's a couple reasons why this is happening. Dana White said it actually this past weekend after another fight week that was very successful. Dana White said, look at what boxing is having to do in order to get their numbers up. And I talked about this all last week. They are now having to literally roll out every old boxer that they know, every retired boxer, every big-name boxer that's even in the spectrum, and saying, hey, will you come do a celebrity boxing match against a YouTuber? Or will you come do a celebrity boxing match against another washed-up boxer? Now listen, was it fun seeing Tyson last week? Yeah, it was fun. But if you're relying on Mike Tyson coming out of retirement to fight Roy Jones Jr. for your quota, for your money, for your pay-per-views, boxing's in a world of hurt right now. I mean, we're now having to have a Floyd Mayweather-Logan Paul fight because boxing needs the money. Boxing needs the pay-per-view numbers. Boxing needs to stay relevant. And like Dana White said, is look at what you're having to do in order to be successful. Dana White is having more viewers on his prelim cards. And for those of you who don't know much about fighting, prelim are basically the no-name people that are trying to make it big in the UFC. And he's averaging around 1.9 to 1.18 million, not followers, viewers on every single prelim fight, every single fight night. And these are people that, it's not like we're seeing Tony Ferguson, Conor McGregor, the Koreans. It's not like we're seeing, the Korean Zombie or any of these other big name guys. We're not seeing any big name UFC guys. These are prelim fights with basically, this is Joe versus, Johnny. And this is their, 12th ever professional fight. And they signed a UFC contract because they won a TV show, or they won The Ultimate Fighter, or Dana White signed them just to see what they could do. And they're trying to prove themselves. And he's averaging more viewers on that than boxing is getting in most of their headline fights. So like I said, I don't want to harp too much on the boxing versus UFC crap. But I just thought that point from Dana White was so smart, is look at what you're having to do. Look at the gimmicks you're having to do in order to make yourself successful. That would be like if I said, hey, every week you listen to the podcast, you get $10. Well, then after a while, if I don't have enough money to go around because so many people are wanting to claim $10 free just for listening to an episode, and I say, well, I can't afford $10 to everybody, so you're just going to have to listen to it just for the joy of the podcast, I might keep 20% of you, but the other 80%, they're gone. Why? Because they were here for a gimmick. They were here for a shtick that I was just saying, hey, I'll give you something if you do this. And that's what boxing is doing. They're using these big-name celebrity fights, and I say big-name celebrity fights. Floyd Mayweather's the big name in this fight, absolutely, of course. But they're using these celebrity fights as a stepping stone to hopefully make them successful and popular once again. And that's why this fight's happening. This fight's happening because, A, Logan Paul and Jake Paul are two of the smartest freaking YouTubers I've ever seen in my entire life. These dumbass kids who apparently want to be professional boxers. I put that in quotations because I don't know if that's a load of crap or if they actually want to. But these professional boxers are just getting the cash grab of their life. I mean, Logan Paul is literally fighting Floyd Mayweather. Jake Paul is apparently, from what I've heard in the community of fighting, he's in negotiations with Conor McGregor's team. They're about to fight two of the biggest name fighters in the entire world. Now, the Conor fight is not guaranteed whatsoever, but February 20th, Floyd Mayweather is fighting Logan Paul. So on their end of it, this is brilliant because they are 23, 25 years old and getting they're getting the biggest bang for their buck. They're getting millions and millions of dollars to fight. Nate Robinson wasn't a big name guy in the boxing world, but Floyd Mayweather is the biggest guy in the boxing world. So it's very smart on their end. Why is Floyd Mayweather doing it? Money. Why does Floyd Mayweather do anything? I'm sure Floyd Mayweather, they're going to say at the end of the boxing match, oh, he only walked away with $20 million. You don't think that Floyd Mayweather is getting a $50 million signing bonus just to sign the contract? Floyd Mayweather does everything for the simple fact of money. And then boxing is doing this for the simple fact that they need more eyes on their sport. They're losing interest, they're losing fans, and the UFC is starting to dominate the fighting world. So that's why this fight's happening. Kudos to Logan and Jake for grabbing their money while they're young. Floyd Mayweather, kudos to you to being 5,000 years old, it seems like, and still getting paid ridiculous amounts of money to come out of retirement and fight. Now, I will admit, the one thing that did intrigue me after the last fight, I want to see Mike Tyson in a real exhibition match against Roy Jones Jr. again. That was rules boxing. And that's my problem with this as well. You can't hit Roy Jones in the head. You can't hit him too hard to the body or too low in the body. They gave Roy Jones Jr. extra padding in his belt area, and all Tyson could do was hit body shots. I want to see that. No rules, straight up boxing match. Here's my problem, boxing. If you're going to actually do this, if you're going to let the doors open and say, we're going to do celebrity boxing match, then hell, if that's what you got to do to make a bang for your buck, then make it an actual boxing match. Like the Jake Paul and Nate Robinson fight. Now, Nate Robinson was a terrible fighter. I talked about all of that last week as well, so if you want to know all their details, go watch the last episode of the podcast. But that was no rules, straight up, let's fight till someone gets knocked out or till, we come to a decision towards the end. I want to see Mike Tyson. If you're going to drag his old ass out there, let Mike Tyson fight for real. Don't put any handles on him. Don't put him in handcuffs and say, well, you can't do X, Y, Z. Just a free tip for you, boxing, because if that was an actual fight, I would have rather have seen Roy Jones Jr. go down in the third round and Mike Tyson standing there like the champ that he is, than watch them go to a draw when everybody knows, and I even talked about it last week, that the scorecard was so completely in Tyson's favor, it was laughable when they said draw. And that is my problem with this upcoming Logan Paul versus Floyd Mayweather fight. Is this going to be another, well, Logan, you can't go for Floyd's head, you can only go to the body? Well, here's the deal. I think it is going to be, because I don't think Floyd Mayweather is going to jeopardize getting knocked out or losing his boxing, his undefeated streak to a YouTuber. Now, that being said, I still believe that if this was if this was a no-rules fight, I do believe that Floyd Mayweather dominates this fight 100%. He's just going to outbox him. He's not going to give him a chance. But if you give Logan Paul just free range and say, Logan, go out there and try and knock out Floyd Mayweather, I mean, anything's possible. Anything's possible. I mean, they call it a puncher's chance for a reason. So I don't know if they're going to have a bunch of rules when it comes to this fight like the Tyson fight did, or if they're just going to say, hey, go out there and box. If Floyd gets knocked out, Floyd gets knocked out. Like I said, I don't think that's going to happen. But that's one of my biggest problems with this whole celebrity crap is you're giving them rules and we're not actually getting to see a fair fight. I just want to see if you're going to have these fighters out there, if you're going to drag Tyson, out of his old folks' home and let him come box again, then let him be free. Let him box. Don't put handles or handcuffs on him. Same thing with this Floyd fight. If we're going to actually see this fight, and it looks like it's been announced everywhere, so I guess we are, then I don't want any handcuffs on either guy. This is a straight-up boxing match. The best fighter wins. Now, if that's the case, Floyd Mayweather dominates this fight because he is so technically incredible in the boxing ring, it's unreal. And for those of you who have never seen Floyd Mayweather fight, he is a boring fighter. He's a counterpuncher. So all Floyd Mayweather does is he waits for you to be vulnerable. He picks his spots. He hits, dap, dap, then he's out. It's a lot of moving around the ring. It's a lot of counterpunching. If you get in close and start going on a fury, it's a lot of clinching. It's a very boring fighting style, but it has made him the best boxer in the entire world. And like I said, if you want to know why I think that's so boring, and if you want to know why 70% of America thinks that's boring, go listen to my last podcast because I discussed how boring all of this is and what the numbers are showing. But yeah, that's the big fight going on. If this is a fair fight, Floyd outboxes him and wins. He's not going to knock him out. But I do believe that they're going to put some sort of stipulation on it because they don't want Floyd to accidentally get knocked out by Logan Paul. Let's be honest. But if there's ever an argument as to can Logan Paul outbox Floyd Mayweather, the answer is no. Because Logan Paul got his ass kicked by another YouTuber named KSI. So KSI was able to beat Logan Paul. I believe that Floyd Mayweather, the greatest boxer to ever walk this earth, will hands down be able to beat Logan Paul. All right, well, as always, the locker room likes to keep things fresh, so I have a brand new segment. I don't have a name for it. I just thought about it today, actually, and I thought it'd be a lot of fun. So basically what I'm going to do is I have a list of all 32 NFL teams, and I'm going to just look at a team at random, and I'm going to give you the first thought that comes to my mind. So super simple. I thought it'd be a lot of fun. I've seen it somewhat in a couple other sports sports shows, but basically what they do is they give a word or like 2 words. So I'm just going to give you just a sentence, a phrase, whatever. First thing that comes to my mind when I see this team, and I have it on random generate. So it's just going to pop up a team, and I'm going to try and not really think about it too hard. Just think about the very first thing that comes to my mind when I see this team. So let's go ahead and start off with team number 1. I will put it through the random generator. Boo 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 boo. There's no sound to it, but I'll make the sound every single time. First team is the Pittsburgh Steelers. So for the Pittsburgh Steelers, the first thing that comes to my mind is the best team to not win the Super Bowl. Now, the Pittsburgh Steelers fell last night to the WTFers, but at the end of the day, Alex Smith has just been incredible, and we'll talk about him a little bit later at some point on this show, I'm sure. But the Pittsburgh Steelers are undefeated no more. They're still 11-1. They're still fighting for top the division. As long as they go the rest of the way undefeated and Kansas City drops one or vice versa, they should still have the division lead at the end of the day. But they are the best team this year that is probably not going to win the Super Bowl. They've had way too many injuries on the defensive side of the football, Bud Dupree now, and they don't have a consistent running game. And that has been Pittsburgh's biggest problem this year, is James Conner not being able to be consistent enough in order to give that team balance. Last night, if they had any sort of balance from the backfield, they would have walked away with probably a 20-point victory over the WTFers. But because they couldn't run, they made Big Ben just dump the ball off the entire game. And the problem is when you pass that much, then defensive linemen tend to start stepping back and being active and jumping with their hands. And that's what happened at the end of the day. They got the ball tipped, turnover, end of game. The Pittsburgh Steelers, a lot of people say, are built for the Super Bowl. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers are built to be close to the Super Bowl, but I do not believe they are going to win it. Next up, the Dallas Cowboys. All right, so the Dallas Cowboys, I think I'm going to go too little, too late. The Dallas Cowboys, in my opinion, had an opportunity to clinch this division even without Dak. And I talked about this on several prior episodes of this podcast where I said that Andy Dalton, the even though they have injuries plagued on the offensive line, they still have plenty of weapons to be an effective football team. And they have started to show their possibilities of what they could be in the last couple weeks. Now, that is because Andy Dalton has been at the helm, but I just think they're making their push way too late in the season. And if they would have just opened up this season and or after Dak got hurt, played with a type of urgency and played with a sense of urgency, I believe that this team would be sitting up top the division with probably 6 or 7 wins. But at the end of the day, too little too late for the Dallas Cowboys. Moving on, and I've already started scrambling these before I get towards the end, so you don't have to keep hearing me go boo-boo-doo-boo-doo. Next up is Seattle Seahawks. Can't keep winning off of Russell Wilson's play. This has been my biggest problem with the Seattle Seahawks over the last several years. They rely on Russell Wilson more than I think any team relies on an individual player. They think that he has to be the guy that gets them to stop in the fourth quarter, makes the incredible minute and 20-second comeback. And don't get me wrong, Russell Wilson's incredible. Russell Wilson has the ability to do so. We have seen him do it over the last several years. But at the end of the day, the playoffs aren't based on one person. They aren't based on one last drive. Usually in the playoffs, you get very few close games unless the teams are pretty evenly matched. It's usually the better team most of the time goes to the top. And that is my problem with Seattle. Is they are not where they need to be on the defensive side of the football, in the backfield when it comes to running the football, mainly on the defensive side of the football, if I'm being honest. I think Russell Wilson and that offense has been very good this year. They've had a lot of injuries in the backfield, but at this point, I just believe that that's what Seattle does, has 7 running backs that all get hurt. So they're playing, their third-string practice player by the 7th week in the season. But their defense is just bad. Dunlap has done a decent job there, but they can't cover anybody down the field. They give up the edge almost every single game, and they allow teams to just run all over them. So while they're supposed to be a better run defensive team, they've seemed to be better through the passing side of football than they are the running side of football. And also Jamal Adams is a waste of money, a waste of cap space, and you now know why the New York Jets didn't want Adams there. He's done nothing for you. He's been a waste of time. We've seen him be pathetic Sunday in and Sunday out. He's injured all the time. So at the end of the day, I just believe that Seattle can't continually rely on Russell Wilson to carry this franchise. They've got to get him more help, and he has offensive help by getting DK Metcalf, but their defense has got to do something. Next up, we've got the Kansas City Chiefs. Okay, I know probably a lot of you are going to think that I'm going to say something about Patrick Mahomes, and while he's incredible, I'm going to say no defense, no problem. The Kansas City Chiefs defense is statistically performing way worse than they were last year when they went on their run. They can't really stop anybody. They're allowing a whole lot of yardage. They're giving up several hundred yards to teams this year on the ground. Most teams are averaging around 115 to 120 on the ground against Kansas City, which if Kansas City has to play let's say a Tennessee Titans, a Baltimore Ravens in the playoffs, I think it's going to give them a lot of trouble. But here's the deal. It's kind of like having LeBron James. At the end of the day, when you have a guy that is so good and can get to the basket at any point in time, you're not worried about scoring a bucket. When you have Patrick Mahomes that has Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, and all three of them are not only so in sync, but are playing at such a high level that they can score in under 30 seconds, then it doesn't matter if your defense can't stop anybody from scoring the damn football, because all you need is 17 seconds and you can go score it yourself. So no defense, no problem. I fully expect Kansas City to be right there and on its way back to a Super Bowl again, especially with what I've been seeing from not only that whole side of the football world, but what they're going to be going against. They have a very strong chance of repeating for the Super Bowl. So no defense, no problem. Going on, we've got the Philadelphia Eagles. Jalen Hurts is the answer. Listen, when teams are in funks like this, when you have a coaching staff that refuses to respond to basically the body language on the field, when you have a quarterback that is struggling to the point of what Ryan Tannehill was in Miami after he got back from all his injuries, you need a fresh set of eyes, a fresh voice in the offensive side of the football, fresh voice on the defensive side of the football. And that is why I think Jalen Hurts is going to do just fine for this Eagles team. Now, do I think that this Eagles team is going to win the division? Absolutely not. But Jalen Hurts is the break that this team needs in order to, I think, maybe make a push for the division leaders. Now, I don't know who they have left to play, if they can even win out, if they would be the division leaders. I really don't know. But if there's anybody that could create a spark big enough to set this Eagles team forward, Jalen Hurts is the guy, in my opinion. Carson Wentz reminds me, and I bring up Ryan Tannehill in Miami. He reminds me of a Ryan Tannehill in Miami. Someone with a lot of potential. He was bogged down by a lot of injuries. Comes back, he plays subpar. He gets released from Miami, then he goes to Tennessee. We know the rest of the story. Ryan Tannehill's been fantastic. Carson Wentz in this offseason most likely I think is going to be probably traded. At this point, there's just not a whole lot you can do. Can he find a way to a team like the Chicago Bears? Can he find his way to a team that could use his set of skills? Maybe the Dallas Cowboys if they get rid of Dak Prescott and really turn his career around? Absolutely. I think Carson Wentz is very talented. I just think he's in a bad mental situation with the Eagles. And being married to a sports psychologist, trust me, I know when a player is not mentally into something because I hear about it all the time when I'm watching a damn sports game. But Carson Wentz just mentally is not there. So Jalen Hurts is the spark that they need. Carson Wentz, I fully expect him to be gone this offseason. And you'll see a revitalized Carson Wentz similar to what we have seen from Ryan Tannehill at another team. Next, we've got the New England Patriots. Belichick is doing his best. Here's the deal. Bill Belichick, and I said this at the beginning of the year, he is working with basically a table of scraps, and somehow that scraps is turning into a decent car. It's one of those clunker cars. It, cost $12,000 or $1,200, not $12,000, good grief. Cost $1,200. It gets you from point A to point B. At some point, the car is going to explode and the engine's not going to work, and you're going to need it on the one day you need to get to work, which for them would be the playoffs. And it's going to crap out right before the playoffs. But Bill Belichick is doing his best with all of the players that opted out in this season. all of the inconsistencies on the offensive side of the football, all the COVID cases that have surfaced, all the injuries, at some point, you've got to realize how great Bill Belichick is, because what he is doing with such a crappy football team is pretty remarkable. So just as much as people are saying Tom Brady was the reason Bill Belichick was great, or Bill Belichick was great because, he made Tom Brady what he is, they both are great in their own regard. And I think we're seeing Bill Belichick do one of his better coaching jobs with not only a team that is a lot worse, but changing his coaching style, changing the offensive style, with a defense that is missing basically all of its great players besides Gilmore. I mean, they are in shambles, but Bill Belichick has done his best. Moving on, let's go to Green Bay is the next one. All right, with Green Bay, I would probably say Aaron and LaFleur got it together. So as many of us know, there was a lot of contention last season. We saw Aaron Rodgers and Matt LaFleur yelling at each other several times. We saw Aaron Rodgers' discontent in a lot of the media. And at this crossroad that happened after the NFL draft, when they drafted a quarterback, when a lot of people said LaFleur's drafting Aaron's replacement, it got pretty damaging for a while. And we saw an unhappy Aaron Rodgers go on talk shows and talk about how upset he was about it. We heard Matt LaFleur basically say that, Aaron Rodgers has got to be better, play better, and there was a lot of tension between them. But for some reason, at the beginning of the year, I don't know if they had to sit down, drink a couple glasses of whiskey together, because that's Aaron's favorite drink, and they got it together. And what we are seeing is a very successful Green Bay team that is going to be right in the hunt like they were last year, and that is basically because they got their relationship back on track. Listen, in today's world, it's very easy for players like Aaron Rodgers to demand a trade and say, I'm done, I'm not playing here, I'll sit out, and blah, 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 blah. And at the end of the day, Matt LaFleur probably would have ended up trading him. But instead, he sucked it up. They had a conversation according to them. They figured everything out, and we're seeing a mended relationship, and we're seeing a Green Bay team that has Aaron Rodgers balling out this year, an offense that for some reason from last year to this year has decided to really step up, an offensive and defensive line that are playing very well, and a run game that is slowly coming around, and we're starting to see this gel a little bit more. All right, next we've got the Baltimore Ravens. I call them the Baltimore Bums. I had the Baltimore Ravens winning the Super Bowl at the beginning of the year. They have not taken the season seriously. There's been a lot of players injured. I get that, but at the end of the day, they still have enough talent to be winning some of these football games that they have lost thus far this year. Okay? So take the injuries aside. There's a lot of teams that have to perform without some of their better players, and they're getting along just fine. They are literally the biggest disappointment and the biggest bums in the NFL right now. They're getting COVID tests positive every single week because they're being caught at strip clubs. They're being caught at parties. So do you think that Lamar Jackson and that team is really destined to go back and try and win a Super Bowl this year? No. Their focus isn't there. Their energy is not there. And when your focus isn't there, we saw this happen to the Los Angeles Clippers in the bubble. If you're not focused on winning a championship and you're more worried about going to a strip club, you're not going to win a championship. Lemon Pepper Lou did it, and now we have Lazy Lamar. Now, I don't think it's Lamar. He was the first player that came to my mind. But when you only have half of your players in games because of COVID, and you're finding out that a lot of these guys are going out and partying, then it's your fault. Right, so you're the Baltimore Bums. Next up, we've got the Cleveland Browns. All right, well, the Browns, I am going to say good for you. All right, here's the deal. If the Browns go to the playoffs and they get swept in the first round, whatever. If the Browns don't make it to the playoffs, they're a game short, whatever. At this point, the Cleveland Browns have a winning season, so good for you. Good for you, Cleveland. Good for you, Browns. Good for you on not being the worst team in the NFL. Good for you on being respectable. The Tennessee Titans got an ass whooping from you on Sunday, right? I already talked to you on my Titans take about attending the Titans funeral. So thanks again for that food platter. Thanks again for sending those roses. But good for you. First winning season in what was it, 12 years, something like that? Maybe it might not be 12 years. I thought I saw 12 years when I was researching this earlier. But, yeah, Cleveland Browns, good for you. I mean, I really don't know what else to say. I don't want to really harp on you. I don't want to talk about your negatives. I don't even want to talk about your positives. I just want to say good for you guys. Moving on, let's go to the WTFers, the Washington football team. For those of you who played my little quiz earlier this week, I call them the WTFers. Now, I have called them the last placers before, but I usually refer to them as the WTFers. And, I mean, this one's so simple for me. Comeback Player and Coach of the Year. Set all the aspirations, set the game aside yesterday of them beating the Steelers, set the goal of winning the division aside. I just want to focus on the comeback quarterback of the year, the comeback player of the year, the comeback coach of the year. Ron Rivera going through cancer treatment all the way throughout the season, missing some games. And then Alex Smith, the second Alex Smith put back on a cleat and walked onto a football field, he not only won this award, but he should have this award named after him. He has been phenomenal. He has been an inspiration. First off, he has this team in the right lane in order to win this division, right? It's going to be between them and the New York Giants, so it's going to be a very interesting finishing of the season. But all that aside, this is just straight up comeback coach of the year, comeback player of the year. I am extremely happy to see both of those men not only be out on the field and doing their job, but just seem happy. They seem like they're getting healthier. And both of these awards, not only the comeback coach of the year, or not only the coach of the year, but the comeback player of the year, they should be named after these two guys because they're a true inspiration of what a good family man is, what a good role model is, and yeah, just comeback of just the WTFers, the comeback of the year. I should just put that banner across your team now. So the WTFers, I might at the end of the year start calling you the Washington football team, but it's so much more fun to say the WTFers. Moving on, the name generator, the New York Giants. Look at that, the team that they are going up against for leaders of the division. I'm going to say the New York Giants are the most resilient team in all of football. Listen, at the beginning of the year, Saquon Barkley, your best player, goes down. Torn ACL, done for the year. Daniel Jones gets hurt. Now he's out. You have Colt McCoy literally throwing footballs and beating the Seattle Seahawks, which in and of itself blows my mind. But this Giants team has a sense of pride and a sense of attitude that not a lot of these lower teams have. While I say they're the most resilient team, this team not only is first in the division, this team very well could win the division. And it's not based on how much talent they have. They have some talented players, don't get me wrong. The quarterback position is a big hit and miss right now, of course, with Colt McCoy back there. Not that I hate Colt McCoy, it's just he's not that great of a quarterback. Daniel Jones is inconsistent. They have clearly no running game whatsoever. But this team just continually fights back, continually claws every single football game, and they are bashed just as much as the New York Jets. The Giants could have a 10-win season, and people are still going to treat them like crap, right? So they get trashed all year long. They've been counted out from the beginning of the year. And they continually fight every single Sunday, and they have proved not only that they have one of the biggest hearts when it comes to a football team, but they are one of the most resilient teams, and they might as well be on their way to winning this division, which is crazy to say the least. But definitely the New York Giants, I'm rooting for you. I could give a crap who wins this division because the first one to probably 6 wins wins it. But I am rooting for the New York Giants when it comes to this division. Moving on, I've got it going. The Las Vegas Raiders. I would say one of the most improved teams from last season, but also one of the most inconsistent teams from last season. If it wasn't for the Jets having the dumbest coaches ever known to walk this earth, they lose to the Jets this week, right? The winless Jets beat the Las Vegas Raiders, the same team that also beat Kansas City at some point this year, right? So, and they almost beat them the second time they played Kansas City. This team is very much improved on the offensive side of the football. Darren Waller and Henry Ruggs are nightmares to match up with. Josh Jacobs has been incredible. Now, he was out this week due to an injury, but he has been just an awesome player for them. Derek Carr seems to be doing just fine at that quarterback position. Their defense is shaky, but hey, they have a lot of improvement from last season to this season. But they have got to be more consistent across the board. You can't go from beating Kansas City and playing at a very high level and throwing over 360 yards to almost losing to the Jets a couple weeks later. They've got way too many inconsistency problems, and I think a lot of it deals with the leadership as well. Gruden runs his football teams a certain way, And some players respond really well to that. Some players don't. And once they can finally all get on board with a unified voice and a unified goal and message, I think you're going to see a lot more consistency from Sunday to Sunday. Right now, you can even tell Derek Carr's had many arguments on the sidelines this year with Gruden. So once they can get on the same page, once the arguing can stop, once they stop questioning each other, then you're going to see a much more unified, a much more goal-oriented Vegas team. And once that happens, this Vegas team is going to be a pretty good team for the next few years. Now we've got the Minnesota Vikings. The Minnesota Vikings is interesting because there's a couple of things that come to my mind instantly. Of course, Dalvin Cook, one of the best running backs in all football. Kirk Cousins has slowly come around to being a much better quarterback than he was the last few years. Adam Thielen is having another monster year. What I would say about the Minnesota Vikings, Dalvin delivers and Cousin can be your quarterback. Dalvin Cook is arguably the best running back in all of football. If you watch him play, if you watch the impact that he has on the game, if you watch his explosion, and trust me, I have him on fantasy, so I've watched a lot of Dalvin Cook. I watched a lot of Derrick Henry. Dalvin Cook should be in that conversation for best running back in football. Now, a healthy Christian McCaffrey, Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, that once you put them in, I'm not saying that he is the best running back, but he should be in that conversation. Dalvin Cook delivers every single Sunday no matter what. He is becoming their staple. The Minnesota Vikings are starting to kind of mold themselves after the Tennessee Titans. Rely heavily on the run game, rely heavily on play action. And here's the deal, Kirk Cousins can deliver. Kirk Cousins can be your quarterback. I think Kirk Cousins has made a massive step forward this year in his play, in his consistency, in primetime games. The Minnesota Vikings got off to a shaky start, don't get me wrong. But now that they're settling in, now that Justin Jefferson is the rookie of the year runaway, Justin Herbert's close, but after his egg that he laid on Sunday, it's going to be pretty tough. But I like what I've seen from Kirk Cousins. I like what I'm seeing from Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook and Kirk Cousins and this offense can work, and I think it is going to work for the future. Let's go to the Buffalo Bills. I'm going to say Josh Allen is underrated. Now, Josh Allen has been putting up 300 plus every single game, and it looks like 4 touchdowns is just automatic. But if you look at his draft class, if you look at the quarterbacks that were in that draft, Baker Mayfield was taken over him. You've got Lamar Jackson in that draft class as well. I think Allen is the best pure quarterback from that draft. He's the second most athletic, without a doubt, right behind Lamar Jackson. But as far as arm talent, as far as accuracy, the last couple years, he's just exploded in his accuracy portion of his game. I love Josh Allen. He is making this Bills team not only respectable, because they've been respectable for the last couple years, but I would say he's making this team feared in the NFL. The Bills are absolutely a good defense, a good offense. They've got to get the run game going a little bit more. We saw that a lot more last night with Zach Moss finally as the young rookie coming along. He had a couple nice runs. Singletary having a lot better last couple of games. But I am proud of what I've seen from Josh Allen, and Josh Allen is probably the best quarterback, even over Lamar in my opinion, from that draft class. Josh Allen is awesome. Now, here's the deal. We have a lot more of these to get to. I'm going to push these to next week. We're going to do one more for you, so that way I don't have to rush through these, and you don't have to listen to another hour of podcast material, which some of you might like that, but I try and keep it to 45 minutes, so that way you're not having to pull your hair out towards the end going, come on, man, get these over with. You haven't said my team yet. So to do you justice, to do these teams justice, to do the podcast justice, let's do one more, and then I will finish these to start off next week's podcast. Let's go with the San Francisco 49ers. Look at that. What I would say about this team, better luck next year. Here's the deal with San Francisco. You feel bad for them. They just came off of a Super Bowl appearance. They have the weapons in that roster, in that locker room, to really be back as Super Bowl contenders again this year. Now, here's the deal. I'm not a Jimmy Garoppolo guy, but we can talk about that another day. Jimmy Garoppolo is a good game manager. I wouldn't even say a great game manager, but he's a good game manager. but they need somebody better in that position. Hey, Carson Wentz, if he gets traded there, maybe they do a switcheroo. Jimmy Garoppolo goes up to Philly. Carson Wentz goes to San Francisco. If that's the case, San Francisco is definitely high up in the Super Bowl contending next year. They've had one too many injuries this year, and you just can't overcome how many injuries they have had to overcome. Their best running backs have been hurt. Mostert comes back, gets hurt again. He's been nicked up all year long. George Kittle out. Jimmy Garoppolo, even though I'm not a big fan of Jimmy Garoppolo, I think Mullins has done a much better job, especially when he had his weapons like George Kittle. Mullins had a much better few games when all the weapons were actually healthy. But that being said, you're still losing your starting quarterback. Your defense just seems to be plagued with injuries as well. So you have all of these things going against you. At the end of the day, you feel bad for San Francisco, but there's just not a whole lot that they can do with all these injuries. So let's see what happens next year. There's just not a whole lot more you can do with all these injuries. I think Mullins has done a decent job, and he's definitely earned himself a quarterback spot either as a backup or a starter at some other place. I thought he has been playing pretty decent. When you have this many injured players, there's not a whole lot you can do. So better luck next year. I'd like to see maybe someone move to San Francisco, get Garoppolo out of there. They really need a dynamic quarterback, especially with what their coaches like to do. They really need a dynamic quarterback like maybe a Carson Wentz or a Marcus Mariota. Even though I don't think Marcus Mariota is the answer, they need something different besides Garoppolo to deliver a more accurate football and to just bring them some more athleticism from that position because they like to play with a lot of athleticism there. And I just threw in Marcus Mariota because I'm a Marcus Mariota fan. Of course, go Ducks. Why would I not throw in Marcus Mariota? I just want to see Marcus Mariota playing on a football team, okay? Not a backup. I want to see him playing. But we can talk about that argument another day. Before we get into the final stages of this episode, I'm going to give you your keywords. And that is right. I told you. You want to be a part of this? You got to listen to the full episode because it's going to drop at any point in time. Your first keyword is Merry. M-E-R-R-Y. Merry, just like Merry Christmas. Maybe that's a hint. Who knows? But your first keyword is Merry. All right? And hey, like I said, that might be one of two keywords that comes in this episode. Wink, wink. Meaning don't shut this off because you never know what could happen. Listen from start to the end. But your first keyword is Merry. But that being said, like I said, we are going to open up next week with finishing off the rest of this list because we do have quite a few left here, and I want to do them just as much justice as I have done the other ones. I hope you enjoyed this segment. It's actually been a lot of fun being able to think on the fly when it comes to this stuff. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know if you have anything to say about any of these other teams or any teams that I've talked about. What are your thoughts on the Floyd Mayweather-Logan Paul fight? There's a lot of things to get to. Our fighting debut show, our Fight Night show, will be debuting soon. We still did not reach 15 yeps to release my co-host. So if you want to know who the co-host is, you've got to go and vote on my Instagram. I'm going to be dropping that again later this week. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Once again, my name is Jacob Courtwright, and I have another keyword for you, so I hope you didn't go away. I hope you're still listening. The next two keywords, Christmas and from. Not and, just the word from. So your first keyword is Merry. Your second keyword is Christmas. Third word is from. Now, don't get ahead of yourself and think it's Merry Christmas from the locker room because this is about to go into a crazy different turn, right? So no guessing. You've got to listen to the show from start to finish. Like I said, this is not going to be on any social media. This is not going to be on anything. So the only way you get these keywords is by listening to the podcast, all right? So Merry, Christmas, and from are your first three keywords. Once again, guys, I'm Jacob Courtwright, and this is The Locker Room.